Hi guys, welcome back to First Chapter Friday. Okay, this is my favorite author when I was in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. When I was in elementary school, my favorite all-time author was Judy Blume. And I read like all of her books. So I had to do a First Chapter Friday on Judy Blume. This book that I've chosen is called Blubber. And you can tell this is an old copy, but it's a really good book. And I'm gonna read you the back and then we'll read the first chapter. It says, Blubber is a good name for her, the note from Caroline said about Linda. Jill crumpled it up and left it in the corner of her desk. She didn't want to think about Linda or her dumb report on the whale just then. Jill wanted to think about Halloween. But Robbie grabbed the note, and before Linda stopped talking, it had gone halfway around the room. That's where it all started. There was something about Linda that made a lot of kids in her 5th grade class want to see how far they could go. But nobody, Jill least of all, expected the fun to end where it did. All right, so here goes the first chapter. Chapter 1, and it's called, It's Very Foolish to Laugh If You Don't Know What's Funny in the First Place. And you can see she puts the chapter in like a quote. My best friend, Tracy Wu, says, I'm really tough on people. She says she wonders sometimes how I can like her. But we both know that's a big joke. Tracy's the best friend I'll ever have. I just wish we were in the same 5th grade class. My teacher, Mrs. Minish, is Mrs. Minish. I'm not crazy about her. She hardly ever opens the windows in our room because she's afraid of getting a stiff neck. I never heard of anything so dumb. Some days our room gets hot and stuffy and it smells, like this afternoon. We've been listening to individual reports on the mammal for almost an hour. Donna Davidson was standing at the front of the room reading hers. It was on the horse. Donna has this thing about horses. I tried hard not to fall asleep, but it wasn't easy. For a while, I watched Michael and Erwin as they passed a National Geographic back and forth. It was open to a page full of naked people. Wendy and Caroline played tic-tac-toe behind Wendy's notebook. Wendy won 3 games in a row. I wasn't surprised. Wendy is a very clever person. Besides being class president, she is also group science leader, recess captain, and head of the goldfish committee. Did Mrs. Minish notice anything that was going on, or was she just concentrating on Donna's boring report? I couldn't tell from looking at her. She had a kind of half smile on her face, and sometimes she kept her eyes closed for longer than a blink. To make the time go faster, I thought about Halloween. It's just 2 days away. I love to dress up and go trick-or-treating, but I'm definitely not going to be a dumb old witch again this year. Donna will probably be a horse. She dresses up like one every Halloween. Last year, she said when she grows up, she's going to marry a horse. She has him all picked out and everything. His name is San Salvador. Most of the time, Donna smells like a horse, but I wouldn't tell her that because she might think it's a compliment. I yawned and wiggled around in my chair. In closing, Donna said, I would like you to remember that even though some people say horses are stupid, that is a big lie. I personally happen to know some very smart horses, and that's the end of my report. The whole class clapped, not because Donna's report was great, but because it was finally over. Mrs. Minish opened her eyes and said, Very nice, Donna. Earlier, when I had finished my report on the lion, Mrs. Minish said the same thing to me. Very nice, Jill, just like that. Now I couldn't be sure if she really meant it. My report wasn't as dull as Donna's, but it wasn't as long either. Maybe the longer you talk, the better Maybe the longer you talk, the better grade you get. That wouldn't be fair, though. Either way, I'm glad Mrs. Minish calls us on us alphabetically, then that my last name is Brenner. I come right after Bruce Bonaventura. Mrs. Minish cleared her throat. Linda Fisher will give the last report for today, she said. We'll hear 5 more tomorrow, and by the middle of next week, everyone will have had a turn. I didn't think I'd be able to live through another report. Are you ready, Linda? Mrs. Minish asked. Yes, Linda said, and she walked to the front of the room. My report is, on the whale. Caroline and Wendy started another game of tic-tac-toe while Bruce went on to work on his nose. He has a very interesting way of picking it. First, he works on one nostril and then the other, and whatever he gets out, he sticks on a piece of yellow paper inside his desk. Oh. The hand on the wall clock jumped. Only 10 minutes till the bell. I took a piece of paper out of my desk to keep a record of how many times Linda said, while she gave her report. So far, I'd counted 7. Linda's head is shaped like a potato and sits right on her shoulders, as if she hasn't got any neck. She's also the pudgiest girl in our class, but not in our grade. Ruth Ellen Stark and Elizabeth Ryan are about 10 times fatter than Linda, but even they can't compare to Bruce. If we had a school fat contest, he would definitely win. He's a regular butterball. Oh, nice girl. Blubber is a thick layer of fat that lies under the skin and over the muscles of whales, Linda said, and it protects them and keeps them warm even in cold water. Blubber is very important. Removing the blubber from a whale is a job done by men called flensers. They peel off the blubber with long knives and cut it into strips. Linda held up a picture. This is what blubber looks like, she said. Wendy passed a note to Caroline. Caroline read it, then turned around in her seat and passed it to me. I unfolded it. It said, "Blubber is a good name for her." I smiled, not because I thought the note was funny, but because Wendy was watching me. When she turned away, I crumbled it up and left it in the corner of my desk. The next thing I knew, Robbie Winters, who sits next to me, reached out and grabbed it. Linda kept talking. And whale oil is obtained by heating the blubber of the whale. European margarine companies are the chief users of whale oil, and it also goes into glycerin and some laundry soaps and has other minor uses. Sometimes Eskimos and Japanese eat blubber. When Linda said that, Wendy laughed out loud, and once she started, she couldn't stop. Probably the reason she got the hiccups was she laughed too hard. They were very loud hiccups, the kind you can't do anything about. Pretty soon, Robbie Winters was laughing too. He doesn't laugh like an ordinary person. That is, no noise comes out, but his whole body shakes and tears run out of his eyes, and just watching him is enough to make anybody start in. So, in the next minute, we were all roaring, all except Linda and Mrs. Minish. She clapped her hands and said, "Exactly what is going on here?" Wendy let out a loud hiccup. Mrs. Minish said, "Wendy, you are excused. Go and get a drink of water." Wendy stood up and ran out of the room. By then, Wendy's note about blubber had traveled halfway around the class, and I couldn't stop laughing, even when Mrs. Minish looked right at me and said, "Jill Brenner, will you please explain the joke?" I didn't say anything. "Well, Jill, I'm waiting." "I don't know the joke," I finally said, finding it hard to talk at all. "You don't know why you're laughing?" Mrs. Minish asked. I shook my head. "It's very foolish to laugh if you don't know what's funny in the first place." I nodded. "If you can't control yourself, you can march straight to Mr. Nichols' office and explain the situation to him." I nodded again. "I'm waiting for your answer, Jill." "I forgot the question, Mrs. Minish." "The question is, can you control yourself?" "Oh, yes, Mrs. Minish, I can." "I hope so. Linda, you may continue," Mrs. Minish said. "I'm done," Linda told her. "Well, that was a very nice report." The bell rang. We pushed back our chairs and ran for the row of lockers behind our desks. Mrs. Minish had to dismiss us at exactly 2:35. Otherwise, we'd miss our buses. It's very important to get on the right one. On the first day of school, my brother, Kenny, got on the wrong bus and wound up all the way across town. Since my mother and father were both at work, the principal of Long Meadow School had to drive Kenny home. I would never make such a mistake. My bus is H4. That means Hillside School, route number 4. I'm glad Kenny doesn't go to my school. Next year he will, but right now he's just in 4th grade, and only 5th and 6th graders go to Hillside. When I got on the bus, Tracy was saving me a seat. Caroline and Wendy found 2 seats across from us. Before this year, I've never been in either one of their classes, but this is my 2nd time with Linda Fisher. And I've been with Donna, Bruce, and Robbie since kindergarten. "We had the best afternoon," Tracy said. "Mr. Vanberg invented this game to help us get our multiplication facts straight, and I was 48, and every time he called out 6 times 8 or 4 times 12, I had to jump up and yell, 'Here!' It was so much fun." "You're lucky to be in his class," I said. "I wish he'd give Mrs. Minish some ideas." "She's the wrong type." "You're telling me." As Linda climbed onto the bus, Wendy shouted, "Here comes Blubber!" And a bunch of kids called out, "Hi, Blubber!" Our bus pulled out of the driveway, and as soon as we turned the corner and got going, Robbie Winters sailed a paper airplane down the aisle. It landed on my head. "Pass it here, Jill," Wendy called. When I did, she whipped out a magic marker and wrote, "I'm Blubber, fly me," on the wing. Then she stood up and aimed the plane at Linda. The group of girls who always sit in the last rows of seats started singing to the tune of "Beautiful Dreamer" Blubbery blubber, blub, 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 blub. At the same time, the airplane landed on 2 6th grade boys who ripped it up to make spitballs. They shot them at Linda. Then Erwin grabbed her jacket off her lap. She won't need a coat this winter, he said. She's got her blubber to keep her warm. He tossed the jacket up front and we played keep away with it. This poor girl. Some people even eat blubber, Caroline shrieked, catching Linda's jacket. She said so herself. Oh, disgusting, Ruth Ellen Stark moaned, clutching her stomach. Sick! The girls in the back started their song again. Blubbery blubber, blub, 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 blub. The bus driver yelled, shut up or I'll put you all off. Nobody paid any attention. Linda picked the spitballs out of her hair, but she still didn't say anything. She just sat there looking out the window. When we reached the first stop, Wendy threw Linda's jacket to me. She and Caroline ran down the aisle, and as Linda stood up, Wendy called back, bye, Blubber. Linda stopped at my row. I could tell she was close to crying because last year, when Robbie stepped on her finger by mistake, she got the same look on her face right before the tears started rolling. Oh, here, I said, and I tossed her the jacket. She got off, and I saw her race down the street away from Wendy and Caroline. They were still laughing. Wow, that is horrible. Well, I hope you enjoyed the beginning of the book called Blubber by Judy Blume, one of my favorite authors. And yeah, I'm kind of sad right now. But we will see you next time. Bye for now.